Hi, welcome to the CaLew Perspective. Hi, John. How are you?
Hey Harold, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good.
We're going to talk a little bit about inspiration in
Ins
life
inspirations,
and life.
ins
Inspirations
inspirations
in
in life.
life.
Okay.
Yes.
Fun.
So, with that being said, what do you think about inspiration?
I think inspirations can come from anywhere and
Okay.
be anything.
Okay.
So not just people, right? You could
No.
be anything in life, that
What
you go
what
through. Yeah.
inspires? Yeah.
What inspires you to do something, to be better, to be whatever.
Okay.
So that's what I think for inspiration. I think there's a lot of examples we can give.
Yeah.
So, but
Well, inspiration, starts at a very young age. And I
yeah.
mean, most of us, we don't think about that. But, when we were younger, and I don't know about you, but I remember some of the kids in grade school when they were asking what did they want to be when
Oh
they
yeah.
grew up.
Yeah.
And right there was sort of that first thought that came to my mind when I started thinking about inspirations in life.
Yeah.
I started thinking about back then and what some of them were saying. And, they were inspired by wanting to be a policeman or a fireman
Yeah.
or a teacher or, those kinds of things. And something about those professions inspired them at a very young age to want to be that,
Yeah, that's interesting.
and so I, found myself trying to figure out in the middle of that, what was it that I was inspired by,
Hmm.
and I could see back then I liked, and it's kind of crazy, but I liked construction. And
Okay.
yeah, I
Construction?
liked construction, but I remember when we would drive through the downtown area, I found it really fascinating looking at the high-rise buildings.
Okay.
And I would lean back into the back of the car and look out the window as we are passing through the downtown area, and I'd be looking up at the buildings.
Okay.
And then another thing that inspired me was the automobile. I looked at the dashboard of the car that we were in at that time, and I liked the the feel of it. If I could just drive this car,
Oh,
that was like
neat.
maybe I'm going to say I remember that probably around the age of maybe four, somewhere
Oh,
between
very
3 and 4.
young that
Yes,
you remember
I
that.
remember that, and I kept thinking, I like to work on a car. Back then, I just wanted to make it run. I saw some of those cars that were broken down. I thought
Yeah.
maybe one of these days I'm going to go and work on a car.
Okay.
Do that.
Ha
So
have you done that then? Did you keep that inspiration all
I
throughout?
did.
Oh, you did.
I did. My very first car
Uh-huh.
in college I bought, and it was none of you may remember this car, but it was called a Toyota Corona. Some guy,
Corona,
Corona, and this guy was
not a
selling it.
Corolla.
Not a Corolla. This was a
A
Corona.
Corona.
And so this
Th
guy was selling that.
yeah.
And I thought, I think I have enough money to buy it.
Okay.
So I'd saved up over the summer
Yeah.
in my college days. And I went and mistakenly bought the car.
How do you what? Wait, what does mistakenly buy a car mean?
Meaning that I didn't
Oh
realize
my goodness.
that when I bought this car,
Yeah.
that I was going to have to work on this car.
Uh,
Really,
like the maintenance
oh
part,
my
like
gosh,
that part you didn't
I
realize.
barely got it to my apartment at
Oh
the
my
time,
gosh.
just enough to get it there,
Yeah.
and then stopped it. And it's
Oh,
like, okay,
yeah.
now I've got to figure out how I'm going to work this. So yes, and then a friend of mine who's uh, f- we've known each other now for about 50 years, but he was the one that said, he said, you know what? I've got a garage.
Yeah.
If you can get your car over to my apartment, he said, we can work on it
Oh,
and then I'll help you, work on the car. So
yeah.
I did do that. I did work on the car. We took the engine out all the
Really?
way down.
You
I
went
mean,
all the way.
all the way. Took it all the way out,
That's
took
cool.
everything, all the pieces. What was interesting is that at the end of putting it all back together, we had extra parts. I did not.
You're like, what's this
Yeah,
trash? What's the trash?
and I'm thinking,
Yeah,
why we get extra parts? And he said, yeah, that usually sometimes that
that
happens.
happens. Oh, does it really? Does it really though?
And so
Oh my
I
gosh.
was test driving that car. I
Yeah.
test drove it quite a ways, but I did work on the car
Oh, that's cool.
finally.
Did it work after you
It
did all that?
absolutely did. I
How long
did.
did you have it for?
I had it for, gosh, I'm gonna say 83, probably. I'm gonna say 80, yeah, to like, I'm gonna say maybe 4 or 5 years.
So it served its
Oh,
purpose.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I totally got, and then I traded it in
Oh.
and got at least $500 credit
Oh,
to
nice.
a new car.
Yeah.
So yes,
Oh, fun.
so I got part of the money back, most of the money back that I bought the car with
Oh, that's
back
good.
in the college days. So
Wow.
yes, yeah, it was kind of interesting. And
That's
I was
funny. So
inspired
you're
to do that.
inspired. You were inspired to do that at 4, and you
And I
did it
did
when
it.
you were in college.
Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So yeah, I just, I've got a few inspiration components here that I'll tell you about. But
Yeah,
what about
go
you?
ahead.
What are you
Oh
inspired by?
man.
What inspired you? Probably at a earlier
At a
age in
young
life.
age, right?
Yeah.
I think what you're saying, like the, police officers, firemen, those ones are always at the top for the younger folk.
Did you ever
Younger
feel like
folk,
that?
younger. I don't know.
No,
No, I didn't.
you didn't.
No, I didn't want to do all that. I don't know. It wasn't appealing to me.
Okay.
But one that we did, doctor
Oh,
was one.
really?
So
Okay.
doctor
Do
was
you
one.
remember how old you were when?
No, it was
Okay.
young,
Okay.
maybe 4 or 5. When I
Okay.
was like, oh yeah, doctor sounds cool. Now it sounds cool, right? And then you realize how hard that is to do, right? And how many years of school and how expensive it is. But yeah,
So was
I
there
think that's
anybody
one.
in particular that inspired you to want to be a doctor?
No, not at
No,
all.
you didn't see that. Where'd you see that
No,
then? Why
must have
don't you
been at
tell me?
school,
At
right?
school?
Because I think at school they really always, not that they hype, I don't want to say hype up, but they talk about those professions, and it's very enduring, right? It's very
Okay.
like,
Okay.
hey, these are the people, the public, the civil servants,
Yes.
the policemen's, the firemen's, right? And then the doctors, because they are the ones that, take care of people and make sure that they're well. Um, what's funny though, they don't talk about lawyers.
I was just gonna say that same thing. I was kind of wondering. I thought, they don't. I don't hear anyone saying, "I want to be a lawyer."
Yeah,
You
they don't
know,
talk about lawyers because I think it's a little different, right?
right?
But they're not a doctor. But again, it's a good profession. Just it's not talked about in that sense
It's a
of
very important
a very
profession
important
too,
profession. You
because
do
if
need
you
it,
don't, yes, and
but
when you do,
it's
you
not held in that same, I think,
exactly.
regard as a civil servant, right? A police,
I mean,
fireman, or
a lot of people didn't even aspire. I mean, back when I was younger, I had a lot of people that talked about being a teacher.
oh yeah,
And it's a great profession
yes,
because to invigorate young minds
yeah.
is almost paramount to the
Foundation of
continue,
yeah, the
yeah, the
foundation of
growth
our
and
yeah,
potential
exactly.
of that.
Right, you need
So
that. Teachers for sure. My parents were both teachers,
okay.
so retired now. My sisters are teachers.
So did you ever feel like wanting to be
No,
a
never.
educator or not?
Well, so I did try it. I will say I did
You did?
try to be an educator. Well, very. I mean, I'll use the word loosely as try. But while I was in college, I
Okay.
did tutor at an elementary school.
Okay.
So I was like an aide, really,
Okay.
for an elementary school, and I did that for, I want to say, gosh, has to be a year at least that I did that for. And I found out that I did not like to do that.
What was it about that you
Man, it's really difficult, right?
okay.
Just the grind of that, like
So it's a
it's a tough
tough,
profession for sure,
so
I
most people
think.
don't
You
realize
have
that.
to love it
Okay.
to really want to do that. You have
Really
to
be
love
an
it.
inspiration to you to do
Exactly. You
that.
really have to, want to teach, and you want to, see the kids succeed. Not that I didn't want the kids to succeed. I wanted it to be easier, right? Like I
Okay.
knew that, when I tried that out as tutoring, I would sit down and talk through it with kids, and sit down individually and walk through, math problems, English, science, all that stuff. And
Hmm.
yeah, I just found it wasn't for me. I don't have the patience for it.
Okay. Okay.
Um, I just want it to be quick, right? Like, hey, how come you don't know it? It's not nothing on the kids, right? Like I want to teach it. It's not, that process for me is not, not that it's not fulfilling. It's not for me,
Okay.
right? Where other people have that inspiration and say, I
They
was
were
able to
passionate about it.
teach. Yeah, they have the
Yeah.
passion about it.
Okay.
I don't have the passion about teaching, that my parents did.
Okay.
My sisters do. I don't have that. I think education is extremely important though, but for me personally, I don't
Right.
want to be the one that has to do that.
Okay. Well,
Maybe I'll
you
do it
found
in
that
other
out.
ways. I'll do it in other
Well,
ways, right? But not
yeah,
as the
always. Yeah.
foundation.
Okay.
I think for foundational work, it's super tough, and shout out to all the teachers out there.
Absolutely. That's what I was going to
It's an
say.
they do amazing jobs, all across the world and countries. So it's
Yeah.
great. But I quickly found out that that is not the profession for me.
So, did you, by any chance, find something that you maybe in school as you got older that you were inspired to pursue, or someone that
So,
maybe there was some
you
fear
know,
that?
yeah, so I will say this. When I was in, I think my last year in high school, senior in high school, I got into environmental
Oh,
sciences.
okay.
hmm
What
And
what brought you there?
I don't know.
You
Uh,
don't remember
I
any
was, yeah, I got into,
Einstein?
no,
Okay.
no. I got into I got into like really help like
Okay.
environmental stuff,
Okay.
right? So like Earth Club, I was, geez, was that? I would think I might have been the president of Earth Club actually in high school, which is weird. Random. I'm pretty sure I was, and I just environmental sciences because I
Okay.
was like, oh man, I can help the Earth. I can, kind of do that. There was a teacher there that did help me in that. She was one that had that kind of breadth of
Okay.
knowledge of, hey, this is about a science teacher, and she was, she taught about that kind of stuff. And man, I think at that time the ozone layer was a big topic,
Okay.
right? Of the
Okay.
ozone, well, there's the hole in the ozone layer above Antarctica. Like that was a big thing at that time.
So were you kind of focused on that?
I was
What drove
focused
you
on
to that?
that.
It's kind of curious.
I did. I want to say I had like a science project I did
Okay.
on the ozone layer with the chlorofluorocarbons. I think that's what
Okay.
they're called.
Yes.
Maybe, yeah. Is that right?
Yeah.
So that like the elimination of that. I think the teacher that I had at that time, she was pushing, hey, like this is a reason why there's something above the ozone, why there's a hole there. One of the reasons, the main factor
So did you
was
want to
gas and
find a
stuff. I
solution
wanted,
for it?
yeah, I wanted to be like, okay, how can I help it then?
Okay.
So, um, yeah, she randomly inspired me, and I didn't even think about this till now, but she randomly inspired me to get into that field. So, environmental science was big for me in my last year of high school, and then when I went to college, the first year, my major was environmental sciences.
Really?
Yeah, but
Okay.
then I quickly found out that I did not like to do that because
What?
of all the math.
Oh,
I'm
really?
not a fan of math.
You're not.
I'm not a fan of advanced math, right? Like
Okay.
business math, the easy stuff, good. Calculus, all that stuff, no, not me.
I used to tell my son that the numbers talk to you,
Hmm.
and if you listen, you won't be opposed to them, what they're telling you.
Yeah.
And he was trying to look at me and think, Dad has gone off the other edge of the
hmm The
the
deep end.
earth, yeah, the
Yeah.
deep end. But I mean, when you think about it, I mean, you have to have those numbers in order to do these certain professions.
Exactly.
Same thing to in the profession that I went into. You had to have numbers. You had to do that. There was no way around it.
Yeah.
And so I told him back then that it's very important not to resist it. So
hmm
had I known you back then, I would have said, John, do not resist.
Hey, look, the calculus told me that I do not need to be doing calculus. That's what calculus told me.
Calculus told you that.
Yeah,
Oh
that's
man, you
what it
should
told
not
me.
have listened to it.
No, I'm glad I listened to it. It would have been a different world
So what inspired you to
without it.
move on past that then? Anything or anybody or?
No person or body inspired me to move. I went from environmental sciences to business administration.
Okay.
And the reason I went to business, I'm going to be honest, the reason I went to business administration, least path of resistance to get my degree.
Okay.
It
So
was the
you
easier path to get my degree because I knew I wouldn't have to do calculus, organic chemistry, and blah blah, so on and so forth.
but you had this passion for.
I had it. I had it.
So he's trying
Until
to
you
tell
realize
he's
that
trying to
it's
tell
not
us
a
that
fit.
I'm not passionate about that anymore.
No, it's just different now. Yeah,
Okay.
not that I don't, agree with those things today. Like I still think it's very important
Okay.
because the world's changed a lot since then as well. It's
Yes.
gotten better. The ozone, the hole over the ozone layer is gone, right? Disappeared,
Okay.
right? So that we've been doing our part as in the world to get that
So
done.
it didn't really
But
need you
it
to.
didn't really need my, non-calculus brain to do it. But but there's other things in the world, obviously, with the involving Earth and Earth sciences and things like that. But no, no passion for that. I thought it was, and it turned out it wasn't
Or
because I got reality struck me in the face.
that really kind of turned him away
Hmm.
to other
To other
ventures,
ventures, yeah.
endeavors.
But
Okay.
thanks for bringing that up because now my inspiration was a high school science teacher that I didn't remember, and that's a great
Okay.
memory to
See,
have.
there's something I knew
Yeah,
that, and we typically don't necessarily focus on the people that inspire us because we're so looking at what it is that we are doing that
right.
we don't realize that there was someone doing something
Yeah,
that inspired us
yeah,
to want to pursue that.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I would say that in my younger days, I remember uh, seeing Frank Lloyd Wright,
Okay,
and I think it was a design that he did. It was this house. It's called Falling Water,
okay.
somewhere in New York. It was so impressive to me back then, and it still is to me today, that he had the insight and vision to build this house where the water could flow right through it and have a waterfall at the and he cantilevered
Can
the
you describe the house so that we can get a visual in our heads?
it was kind of set into a rocky area.
Okay,
It was cantilevered out, the deck was cantilevered out,
okay.
and the water was flowing through the bottom and was coming and falling down like a waterfall.
Huh.
And the way he had it structurally designed, that it was all in equilibrium to the earth itself, and you were able to walk out on this deck that looked like it was floating above.
Ooh,
Yes,
yeah.
and it still exists today. I mean,
Oh yeah. Well, all of his,
his
yeah,
work was just
timeless.
yes,
Yeah.
and so that inspired me. But again, if you remember, I was telling you earlier, when my parents would drive through the downtown areas,
Uh-huh.
I would be staring out the window at the tall buildings. Now, I didn't see, like my dad wasn't necessarily someone that, did designs or anything like that. Well, I think more, if anything, I got the creative side from my mom,
Okay.
even though she was a nurse, but she liked artwork.
Oh, okay.
But my dad was numbers guy, but he did not do numbers other than in the military,
Mm-hmm.
communication and some of the satellite stuff that, I
That's cool.
saw that later
Yeah.
that he never talked about. But he was also a truck driver.
Oh,
So
really?
I was inspired, with him, sometimes he would let me travel with him when
Mm-hmm.
he would be doing a haul or some sort. And I was just amazed at how he could shift all these gears. And I always thought I could never
How
do
many
that.
gears is it?
Yeah,
17?
something like that. He
18?
would be shifting and he had a certain, and he would try to explain to me, but
Yeah.
and I was like thinking, gosh, I want to be like him when I
Mm-hmm.
grow up.
That's cool.
But I had brothers too that were older and younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that sort of the creative side that I think came from more of my mom's side was what sort of ran into, my veins in a sense. She saw this. I didn't know what it was because I'd sit back and I'd be drawing, little doodling, in between my classwork.
Yeah.
And I never thought about it, but I would see, like, when Christmas time came on, the Charlie Brown specials, the cartoons, the animation,
Yeah.
and I thought, wow, how do you make that drawing come to life? And
Oh,
then as I got a little older, I saw Walt Disney and the television program that he would come on, the Wonderful World
wonderful.
of
Even I do
Disney.
that. Well,
You know,
I don't know if I've ever saw him on there, but
yes, he
Michael
used.
Eisner was the guy I
Oh,
saw.
really? Okay, yes.
Yeah.
But Walt Disney used to come
Yeah.
on
He used to be
every
the one.
Sunday
Yeah.
night, and
Okay.
he would talk about the programs that we're going to see.
Yeah.
So I would really tune in to, and I was inspired by Walt Disney of what he did. I mean, he took this magical create, I'd say creation, and made it come to everyone's living room that
Mm.
watched the television on
Yeah.
that Sunday. And when he talked about Disneyland, that I was inspired by the fact that he envisioned a place where parents with their kids could enjoy the same thing without the parents standing and watching their kids ride on rides. They could all ride this. And he was like ahead of his time in that
Yeah.
arena, sort of like Frank Lloyd Wright.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I found him to be a really great inspiration to me because, as I was growing up, we weren't highlighted with very many black uh, icons that did anything. They were not highlighted,
Yeah.
even though they were there. I mean, there are architects now that I see that were not highlighted back when I was young.
Right.
You didn't know about them. And so I thought, well, I've got to find something that, sort of feeds that internal passion that I have that was driving this.
Yeah.
So going through school, I went through school with that in architecture, landscape architecture. I wanted to do it all. Then
Okay.
even a minor in art. And then on the other side, the physics. I mean,
Oh.
I know that sounds crazy, but
Yeah.
I looked over at Einstein and I'm thinking, this man, wow,
Yeah.
it was all I could say, and the thing that sort of drove me in inspirational wise from Einstein is his E equals MC square. And you're like wrapping your mind around that. And
Yeah.
you still wrap your mind around how did this man determine something so profound that really still resonate
Yeah.
through this time frame. And he saw this. And so I would look at, I would say guys like him, mathematicians and things like that, that I sort of stayed on the edge of it. I was not totally afraid of it, but I didn't dive in there because I had other interests
Yeah.
over in this part. So I had a series of different folks that I used for inspiration as I was going through college and even into my professional life. I mean, I looked at some of the business men that were doing things, as far as business,
Hmm.
and we were inspired by how they um, did their job. How did they, go about their business and building a business? And so in that, I was sort of use that as sort of as a means to continue my efforts to do that. And they still today inspire me just looking at that.
Hmm.
So I think at the core of it, my parents started out that, and
Yeah.
then I kept building on it over the course of my life.
That's a good progression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do
That's
you
neat.
think? What do you think as far as any people today you think that still sort of provides inspiration for others? I mean, that you could think of that would.
Um, so personally for me, probably now with inspiration, it's gonna be like my family.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good.
Kids, right? Which is crazy because they drive you nuts. But the kids can be an inspiration to you because, you just have to remember why you're here, right? Why I'm their dad.
But
Um,
that's interesting you say that because now that you said that, I would have to go back and say that I look at our kids.
mm,
I'm inspired by them.
mm,
I mean, I look at Raquel
yeah,
and I think, oh my gosh, she is
yeah,
just like, doing her thing out there.
doing her
And I'm,
thing.
I'm like totally proud of her,
Yeah.
and then I look at Antonio and I
Hmm.
think, he's done some things that I'm thinking was sort of, and he doesn't realize it, but I'm like over the moon on it. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, you have to keep going. And then and I said, I looked at it and saw that he was doing this at such a young age and he
Mm,
didn't realize it. And so as I look at that, I have to think, well, I think maybe if I go back, I'm probably most inspired by them.
hmm.
So I
Yeah.
find myself sort of finding that energy to continue
Right.
pushing myself
Yeah.
so that I can show them too that same thing that
Right.
what they've done for me.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Totally makes sense, right? Like, just yeah, our kids, my kids too. It's the same, right? My oldest,
Yeah,
super
I
smart.
heard you
Like,
through that, and I thought you're right. Absolutely.
yeah,
So
like I'm
some of you guys out
amazed.
there would love to hear
Yeah,
from you on that. You know?
yeah. But both kids, right? My youngest
Yeah.
kid here brings a smile to my face every day. Runs out to me and gives me that hug, and then my older, same thing, and
Can't
very
beat that.
affectionate, and they're super smart kids,
Yeah.
and it's just amazing. I'm excited to see what life
See,
has for
that's
them.
the interesting is
Yeah, but
watching
that'll
that.
inspire me to keep going for them, right? Is like need to provide for them, need to give them the best that I can give.
I
So,
remember my mom saying this, and this was years ago. She sat up with me because I was preparing a presentation.
mhm.
And as a kid, I used to tell my sisters stories. And I told them stories because it was a way that I could keep their attention
Uh-huh.
without them getting in trouble,
Oh, okay.
and so they would like me to tell them stories. And so I would make up stories, and I would make them up such that it would inspire them to really listen,
Hmm.
and then I would I would find myself getting immersed into the story that I was telling them, that to the
Yeah.
point that
You're
I
like, oh,
believed
what
it.
am I gonna
I,
say
you
next? What
know,
am I gonna think
yes.
of next? That's cool.
And sort of the thing that I saw was Walt Disney would tell these stories, and he always said that it is the details
Hmm.
that makes the story engaging, and he's right.
Yeah.
And so I've always used that, drew that, from him, that I believe that if you're telling a story, you have to be someone that believes the story that you're telling so
Yeah.
that others will believe what it is that you're telling them.
Right.
And so she said to me, my mom said, sitting there when I was doing this presentation, working on it, and I was doing an all-nighter, and she was, at that time, she was visiting, and she said, I always wondered what you were going to do with this. And now I see,
Hmm.
which I never understood all these years. And she was the one that actually saw my potential, that kind of steered me in towards architecture, which I didn't know.
Huh.
At that time, that's what it was called.
Okay.
And then as I start to go, I realized that was what it
That was it.
was.
Yeah.
Yes. But I knew what I'd like to do. And she thought, you need to go into this class.
Right.
And she steered me into that.
Good.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
It's
So
amazing.
inspiration, it
Inspiration.
can be
What a
from any
topic.
place.
Could
Yes.
be from any place, anywhere, anything. And you just think in the brain. Like I did not think of my high school teacher until we started talking through
And
it.
so you start and you conjured
And then I
that
thought,
back.
oh, well, yeah, that
See,
is the
there you
reason
go.
why I went there and did that.
Perfect. All right.
So amazing.
Well, that brings us to our conclusion of this
Yeah.
topic here.
Yeah.
Always
Inspirations are good.
find inspiration. You can almost look
Oh
outside
yeah.
in nature
Anything
and be inspired just, looking out.
for sure.
Yes. So, on our kindness,
Yes.
kindness 101.
Kindness 101.
I like to mention that again. I watched an episode of Kindness 101.
Okay.
And this episode, this guy was I think he's a football player. I think he played, I think, for either New York Jets or some young guy,
Hmm.
and an African American man. And the reason they highlighted him is that he had like in school, he was having a tough time because he was dyslexic. I
Oh,
think that's
okay.
what it was. And he couldn't read, and he was having a tough time with that. And he didn't like reading it because he knew that his weakness was that.
Yeah, of course.
But what he found in that, his strength in going back and facing his fear.
Hmm.
And so what he did do is that he joined this book club,
Oh,
and it was the most unlikely book club because this was all women, and they were much older women, and then on top of that, they were all white women.
hmm,
And here's this one young black man, the
yeah,
only male in that group, that he had to overcome his weakness and the uncomfortable state of being in this group, and fit in. And he did so, and they embraced him,
yeah.
and he embraced reading. And it was such a dynamic.
That's neat.
Yes, and it's kind of, and they highlighted that kindness 101.
Yeah,
And we like to highlight kindness 101 because people are doing kind things, and
that's
we
right.
want to encourage all of our viewers and listeners to do something kind.
Do something kind. Small acts of
Yes,
kindness can mean the world to somebody,
absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
So
So
please, that's
please
what we
do that.
ask. Yeah,
We need kindness more so in the world, and we are
we
hoping
do.
that it will become more attention getting
Yeah,
than negative.
that's it.
Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next
See you
time
next
on
time.
the CaLew Perspective. All right, John.
See you, Harold.
Take care.